So I'm a couple days back in the office now after 10 days in Uganda, my first visit to the African continent. And I've been really chewing on what to say here. Feeling like I need to say something, but I figured I'll just kind of share like why I'm chewing on it. First, Uganda is known as a Christian country. I knew that going into the country, and when I landed, I saw, right away, a lot of the cabs or the buses that sort of shuttle people around have these big stickers on the front and the back, and a lot of them say like Jesus is Lord and God is good and things like that, and um, so it's like faith is kind of like plastered around, pretty publicly. Even some of the stores and restaurants are named like Jesus and Maria, or Jesus is good, pharmacy or something. Which obviously you don't sort of see as much here in the West. And then as I kind of moved north into the more rural, part of the country, Gulu, and sort of even further into the Acholi, amongst the sort of Acholi people in that region, I talked to a number of people, locals, about life in that area, and specifically what the Lord's Resistance Army, otherwise known as the LRA, meant for the area, and sort of like, and make no mistake, right? Like the Lord in LRA stands for Jesus, like, so here you have this rebel army that felt like they were doing the Lord's work, and in so doing, would come in at night and abduct kids, and would kill people, have kids kill people, their friends, their own families, abduct them into these camps in the bush to mount an offensive against the government, which they felt was doing, wrong to the people. And then that resulted in the government moving people into these camps. For 20 years, people lived in these camps. So you saw where, the LR, and I asked the guy, I'm like, how did they justify this with their faith? Like, how did they feel like it was okay to kill and and to abduct and to do all this? And he kind of mentioned that there was a woman that kind of became close in line with the movement early on, that they felt was maybe like just a bad influence and like a deceiving spirit, that led the movement that in that direction. And but what I ended up seeing and hearing was that you saw a people who at one point were known as the food basket of Uganda in terms of agricultural production, milk and coffee and all kinds of food, um, that a lot of that was lost, was decimated after decades of living in camps. They just became dependent, forgot how to plant a seed. And part of our design, part of God's design for us as humans is to work. It's like right in Genesis chapter 1, and they forgot how to work their own land. It wasn't passed on. I mean, literally, people were born, raised, and married in camps. And so it was just lost. And not only that, but you see communities there where people live in close proximity, and they know each other intimately. They don't have the same expectations of privacy and seclusion that we do in the West, and they are known to each other. In fact, they have such a strong sense of community that like when like a lot of the words they use aren't sort of like singular, like I, but much more about we. I mean, even when they talk about kids, it's like the language is like a community kid. It's like the child is the community's, and you see still like kids walking around like at younger ages along roadways and things like that. I asked one of the guys, I'm like, how do they do this? Like in America, you wouldn't see this. Like people would be like freaked out that the kid is like loose walking by the road. And he said, the way it is here, people look after everybody. The older kids look after the younger kids, and so, but he said, if it looks strong now, he's like, you should have seen before. The sense of community was much stronger, and with the war and with the evil that came through the land, people came to fear, and they started to want to grasp on to what was their own and make something for themselves, and so it's been largely affected that sense of community and trust, and literally you have people now who have such negative, like post-traumatic, sort of associations with exhilaration, or I talked to one guy, a neuroscientist, who saw kids would be running down the field about to score a goal on the football or the soccer pitch, and they would just fall to the ground in like a flashback, because their associations are in their brain are just messed up, and a lot of folks don't want to talk about it. And so there's really a healing that has to happen amongst those people. And unfortunately, a lot of the aid organizations and people who go there, they talk about jobs, and they fund jobs and entrepreneurship and vocational training and education, but a lot of it seems to be ignorant to the spiritual realities of the tear in the fabric of these people, and the soft side of sort of like society and human beings and development. And so I was encouraged that I got a chance to see like a pastor who's helping reform communities and get them to be accountable to each other and own some land and farm, and another group that is, they're not even explicitly faith-based, but when you look at their work, you just kind of know that the way they're trying to work with people and give them, challenge them and get them to trust each other again and repair relationships in the community is got a sort of a design to it that was familiar to me. And so I guess like I just kind of look at it and I'm like, man, the LRA and even the government, I'm not a politics sort of guy or expert, but I read in the paper one day there in Uganda that, the president is, he said, like, the reason I care for the poor or try to do things to care for the poor is because when I go to, before God, I don't want to have a bad answer, for fear of being, struck down. And so I thought it was an interesting quote from him, because he, a lot of people would say the things he's building and developing that are of substance end up going to sort of friends and family to run, and is that the right thing? It looks corrupt, why not bring more people into those organizations and sort of share the wealth more? So the biggest takeaway I have is, man, you just look out at the way the Lord's name is used in the Bible, and you can see it on bumper stickers, and you can see it, in armies, and you can see it in governments. And man, it can be very difficult to, to say, is this a good thing, and so I feel like it was kind of a confusing trip in a way. Make no mistake, personally, it was rich. I was able to spend time in the Word every day, and as a result, had an amazing time reading through the end of Psalms and the first 10 chapters of Proverbs. Which, by the way, when you travel at all, you ever have any like issues with lust or anything, I would encourage you to read the first 10 chapters of Proverbs. That'll put an end to any of that. So I'm rambling, but it was a good trip. I definitely was in the wake of war and kind of sensed, that. At one point, even 4 hours away from me, American women were being raped, by rebels in South Sudan. So I mean, it definitely had a sense that there was stuff going on that I wasn't on edge. I wasn't fearful at all, but we live in a broken world, and the Lord's name is used, and the Bible is used to make all kinds of cases, that are not of the Lord, and that's probably why one of the commandments is don't use the Lord's name in vain. And so that probably became more clear to me in Uganda than many other places, and I felt like, despite that, you look at the people and they're just beautiful people, full of joy, big smiles, and the dancing and the colors and the work that they do. Some of them, the struggles they've gone through and continue to persevere, is remarkable. And I feel like there's a lot of things they get right in their society that I look back at my own society and say, man, we're missing some things. Living close together as they do, and caring for each other. I saw a group of women sitting around, like 10, 15 women, and there was a baby, like a newborn baby, they're still burping the baby. And each woman would hold the baby for like 10 minutes until the baby, kind of got more fussy. They'd pass the baby on. And so, like, no one woman would ever have to, like, be worn out, I think, by the caring of a baby. And meanwhile, I got a wife who's been raising babies at home and largely in isolation, and who wants to meet other women who want to sit around together on a daily basis and can't. It's just like people are too busy. They work, or they don't, they live too far, or the nap schedules don't line up, or they don't really want to be around people, or they're just a lot on and on and on. It's like very, very difficult to get anything close to what they have there here, if not impossible. So I think we're missing that. I think there's things in African culture that we're missing here, and we don't even know it. So anyway, lots I'm just kind of putting out there, but it's kind of where I'm at post Uganda. I'm sure that a lot of it I'll be wrestling with and thinking about for some time. And so I'm sorry I don't have more sort of concise top 10, takeaways, but it's just kind of where I'm at. I was super blessed to be able to go to that part of the world and see it and dive into places that, are off the beaten path, so to speak. So I'm grateful for that opportunity, and I just felt a strong desire to be home around my family and just love them and remind them that, and be just, seek a new level of intimacy and care for my wife and my family. So hope that's helpful, and I love you guys, and be blessed. And of course, if anybody ever wants to talk more about any of this, give me a call.